just spoke with my mom on the phone. I call her every, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, something like that, to check in on her and see how she's doing. When I called her this morning, I could tell she was groggy. She was still in bed, and it was, 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, and she's always up early. And she showers. She's told me this. She showers every day and gets ready for the day and goes to breakfast and all that stuff. But she couldn't. She told me she couldn't sleep last night for whatever reason. Don't know why. But and she was feeling badly, poorly, I think is what the phrase that she used. And I could tell she was down. Her speech was slow and very diminished in tone, and decibel level was much lower than it normally is. And so obviously I'm a lot concerned about my mom here. She's getting up there in years and has been for quite a while, but she's always, her physical body has been great, and and she may pull right out of this. That's very possible. But I've told you this before, and I've shared this same sentiment with the Lord on several occasions. It's about time for she and my dad to have a glorious reunion. Now that's not up to me. It's not up to anybody, and the Lord will do that in His own good time. His ways are not our ways, and His thoughts are not our thoughts, as we learn about in Isaiah. But we leave it in His capable hands. But when that eventuality occurs, certainly we will miss her big time. But knowing the reunions that are taking place will be a great comfort. And so I'm a little concerned about my mom today. All right. Now, chapter 36 is what we want to get into today. What I read as a child. I didn't read a whole lot as a child, as you well could tell from what the book was talking about. But to carry on a little bit further with what was in the book, I think the first time I actually read the Book of Mormon clear through was in seminary class. Obviously that's the gist of the seminary classes, is to study the scriptures, and so I think that was maybe the first time that I ever read the Book of Mormon was in seminary. Now, having said that, I'm not proud of that fact, but talking to my grandchildren here, you're way further ahead of the game than I was, having the Come Follow Me program and studying, not just reading. You're studying what went on in those chapters and those verses, and visiting with your parents and your teachers in primary and in Sunday school and other, because it's coordinated throughout, the curriculum is coordinated throughout the church, and what an inspiration that is to study the scriptures as opposed to just reading them. You can read lots of things, but to study them and get some depth to your study is a great blessing. So keep working at it, keep looking, keep reading, and so forth. On my mission is when the Doctrine and Covenants really became forceful to my mind and became a living document. Of course, I served in the Central States, and the mission home was in Independence, Missouri. And just to whet your appetite, and I'm sure you all know this, and again, speaking primarily to my grandchildren, I'm sure my children and their spouses know this, but Independence is the center place of the church. That is the history of the church. That's one of the centers of the history of the church. That in Kirtland, and of course back in New York State when it first was originated and organized, the church. But Jackson County was a center place. It was designated as the center place of Zion by Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith dedicated a temple site in Independence, Missouri, the same town where my mission home was. In fact, the temple site was only a block or two away from my mission home. 306 South Pleasant Street was the address of my mission home. And I think I've mentioned this before, but we used to go play football on the temple lot on preparation day, P Day. And as the story goes, and I may have fudged a little bit, when you get tackled on the temple lot, you don't fall to the earth. You just kind of glide down slowly on the temple lot there. Not true, obviously, but it's a sacred spot, and there will be a temple built there. There will be a temple built in Jackson County. The saints thought it would be at that point. It was not to be the case, but there will eventually be a temple built in Jackson County. So when one of these conferences, when you hear that a temple will be built in Independence or Jackson County, Missouri, right there in Independence, you'll know that that prophecy has come to fruition, and the last days are numbered at that point. In addition to Independence and Jackson County, my mission included sites such as Liberty Jail, where the prophet spent a winter, and the events that transpired there, and the great scriptures that were a result of his incarceration in the Liberty Jail. The 121st, 22nd, 23rd section of the Doctrine and Covenants, one of the great sections of scripture in the history of the world, were received in Liberty Jail. And the treatment that the prophet and his compadres received in Liberty Jail, and the events that transpired there, I learned about them and read about them, and appreciated them, and came to love them. So Far West, more history of the church. They gave up their arms, and the militia came in and broke their word. The government broke their word that they were going to negotiate peace between the indigenous personnel and people, settlers in Independence and in that area, Far West, and the saints. Didn't happen, and the treatment, and eventually they were expelled from Far West and from Jackson County, of course, going up to Nauvoo, and we know about that story. Adirondack is in my mission. It's about 45, maybe 50 miles away from Independence, but I was able to go to Adirondack on my mission, of course, where the Garden of Eden is located. The great priesthood meeting that will precede the second coming of the Savior will take place at Adirondack. The reason I give you a little précis here, I'm trying to whet your appetite to read and learn more about these sites, because it is fascinating. It is a wonderful study as you talk about those things. Winter quarters was in my mission. I served in Lincoln, Nebraska, and just not a stone's throw, but a few miles from Lincoln is Omaha, Nebraska, and that's where winter quarters is located, and the events that transpired there. And so I commend those to you, and a study of those events as we learn about church history. All were in my mission. The Visitor Center. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints did not have a visitor center in Independence or in Jackson County until during my mission. It was built right across the street from the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ headquarters. We affectionately called that the Green Barn. That was before their, quote, temple was built, not far from there. But the visitor center was built there in Independence, just down the street from my mission home. And we as missionaries were granted privilege to come from all over the mission when that mission home was, or that visitor center was dedicated. It was during the summer. We went there. I came from East St. Louis, Illinois, all the way to Independence for the mission home, and we got to witness the dedication of the visitor center. Now, interesting event that transpired there. The clouds on the day of the dedication. Off in the distance, and were thick, and some of the blackest clouds I've ever seen. Not very far away, but in the distance some, and threatening torrential rain and lightning and that sort of thing. However, I'm sure to the prayers of the brethren who were there to dedicate the visitor center, and the saints that had come to witness this, held off the weather. The weather was held off until Nathan Eldon Tanner offered the dedicatory prayer, and I'll come to this in a minute here, but when he finished that prayer, well, part of the prayer was this, and I noted this particularly. He said he dedicated the visitor center. He said he'd dedicate this structure for the purpose for which it was built. Now, an interesting note, and I'm not trying to fuel speculation or anything of the sort, but the base measurement of the visitor center, our visitor center, is the exact base measurement of the temple which will be built in Jackson County. Whether or not that will be the temple, I have no idea, but it's interesting to note that the base measurement of that visitor center is the same base measurement as the temple there. At any rate, when Nathan Eldon Tanner finished the dedicatory prayer, and all of the dignitaries, the general authorities, and the folks who were on the stand got into the visitor center, those clouds gathered and were gathering, and it rained and thundered and lightning like I'd never seen in my life. I mean, I was wearing my best blue suit, I remember, and I'd parked maybe, I don't know, less than a block away from the visitor center, and sitting in the chairs and, witnessing this dedication. And I ran as fast as I could run. I mean, it might have been maybe 150, 200 yards. I don't know how, not very far. But before I got to the car, I just as well have jumped in the swimming pool. I was that wet. That rain came down, and the lightning and thunder came down like I had never seen. It really rains hard, and the storms in the Midwest are significantly different than they are here in the West anyway. But that was an amazing event. I believe that Satan knew what was going on there with the dedication of that visitor center, and when it was finished, he unleashed a storm like I haven't seen before nor since. So that's Independence Visitor Center. By the way, I suspect many of you have been to all of those areas and those venues that I just discussed. If you haven't, please go. If you get a chance, please go and soak it in and feel the spirit that is in each of those areas, because the events transpiring there set the stage for what we enjoy in the church today, today. All right, now, other thing about reading. I'm going to be in the gross minority here, I'm sure, with my kids, my grandkids, and everybody. I like to read factual things that actually occurred, as opposed to fiction. Now, my wife and most of you love that fiction. I mean, the Harry Potters and the Moon in June, or whatever, the vampires and all of that other, all good. It stimulates your imagination, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's horrible. It's not bad. It's not negative or anything, but I just choose to read things that are factual. I think they're even more amazing and fantastic than any fiction that could be conjured up by the minds of other authors and so forth. And so I choose to read things about that actually occurred. For example, recognizing that Thomas Jefferson gave actual books about government to James Madison, as James Madison formulated the idea of getting rid of the Articles of Confederation and hammering out the Constitution. James Madison is known as the father of the Constitution. He came up with what is known as the Virginia Plan, which we have adopted a combination of both the Virginia Plan, New Jersey plans. If you don't know anything about those two, go read about it. It's fascinating what went on there. But Jefferson lent many, many books. He sent him a whole case, trunkload of books about government so that Madison could study them, and the eventual result was the Constitution of the United States. So books are fascinating things to read. You get much more detail. Yeah, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'll wait till the movie comes out. Well, the movie can't do a book justice in almost every case. Not always, but in almost every case. One of my favorite movies is Gettysburg, but reading the book Killing Angels, that sounds a little gory, but it talks about the Battle of Gettysburg and great details about what went on there. You get much more insight as you read the book. The movie is wonderful. It's one of my favorites. I watch it every 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of July every year, because that's when the Battle of Gettysburg took place. But the book also enhanced my knowledge of and reverence for the events that transpired at Gettysburg. And I don't, I've read lots and lots of books, but a series that I've read recently was written by Bill O'Reilly. Now, it's called the Killing series, and this is a little gory, but let me just list some of the books if I can remember some of them. Killing Lincoln is a book that he wrote. Killing Kennedy, Killing Christ, which was it's not a religious book. It was about the politics of the area when Christ lived and that sort of thing. Very interesting. Killing Patton, Killing Reagan, very interesting. Killing the Rising Sun, about the Second World War and so forth. Killing England, the Revolutionary War. Killing the SS, the Secret Service in Germany, and Hitler and that sort of thing. Killing Crazy Horse, Indians here in the United States. What went on in those areas. Killing the mob, the mobsters of the 20s, and the Dillingers and the Al Capones and all of those. Interesting account. I'm reading one now about Killing the Legends. It talks about the events surrounding the death of Muhammad Ali and John Lennon and let's see, one other one. Who's the other one? I can't remember. I'll think of it here in a minute. At any rate, these books are so well written. So well, they're easy, it's not gobbledygook. It just tells you about what went on in all of these events that are so important to American history. And so I commend them to you. It's great. Mom has read them. She loves them. I lent them to Diana Spryer. She loves them. And so I commend them to you. If you're interested in any of those areas, they are so well written and easily understood, so I commend them to you. The other books, the Saints series, particularly the first one, that was so well written. The second one had a lot of different individuals in it, and it was a little confusing as to who they were talking about, and there were so many players in that second Saints volume. I just purchased the third one, so I can't talk about the third one until I read it, but fascinating history of the church. Of course, church leaders, lots of books there. Read a book about Dallin Oaks, Uncle Dal, as we call him. He's related to Vicky, of course, in her line, but great man, boy. President Hinckley. Read several on Joseph Smith, and so we could just go on and on and on. The point I want to make is I didn't read too much as a child, but I have learned to love reading as I got older, from my seminary mission, and later on coming back. And of course, I commend those to you. Reading is such an important skill to develop. Your vocabulary increases, your knowledge of the world increases, knowledge in general increases, and your perspective is changed as you read books. So I commend them to you, and thanks very much for listening.